Tonight is all about a screaming life, and I don't think these two rock stars who are here with us tonight need much of an introduction. In case you don't know, Krist Novoselic was a co-founding member and bassist for Nirvana. Yep. And Kim Thayil has been ranked as one of the greatest guitarists of all time by Rolling Stone. Yep. And was a co-founding member and guitarist for Soundgarden. Please join me in welcoming Kim and Krist.
Thank you. Stay standing for a second.
Okay.
I'm Chris. This is Kim.
That's me. I'm Kim.
Raise your right hand and put your hand on the door. Raise your hand, other hand.
Do I?
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
We'll see.
We'll see. Okay. Okay, we got that out of the way. Oh, hi.
Oh, I have no.
Who wants a selfie? Here. Charles Peterson.
Yeah. Do you?
We meet again.
Perhaps you recognize him from some record collection.
So I guess I'm.
All right, I get one.
I went to it was about, like, 30-something years ago, and I went to go see Steve and Jesse Bernstein speak. No, it was at the, he was at some gig, and then he was like the MC, but he refused to be called the MC. Steve and Jesse Bernstein refused to be called the MC at this gig because it was like Lane Fest or something. He goes, I'm not the MC because I'm not that cool. I'm the master of ceremonies. Like, so I'm not the MC either. You know what I'm saying? I'm not the MC. MC Krist. Am I MC Krist? So let's get this show on the road. Okay, well, thank you everybody for coming. And thank you, Elliot Bay Book Company. And wow, look at all the people here. I read books all the time. I read physical books. I read fiction, nonfiction. I love to go to bookstores and just browse. So thank you, Elliot Bay, for this experience and keeping this thing going. I get with my cell phone, I have my cell phone like doom scrolling. Put the phone down, put it down, be good to yourself, read a book, so I do that. And so we're gonna start tonight. So this is Kim's new book, It's Screaming Life. And so we're gonna talk about Kim. So it's not so much about me, but another 20 minutes.
I'm going to drag you into it.
He's going to drag me into it. So when was the first time I was at a Soundgarden show? And I might have been with Kurt Cobain, I might have been with Buzz Osborne, and it was at the Guerrilla Gardens in the International District. And it was yet another club that this building was originally built for something, and then it turned into a club. It wasn't its intended purpose. And then what they did is they went to Boeing surplus. Remember that? And they were like 747s. Those are the seats. And they had like ashtrays, and you could put the seat back. And it might even had some trays for whatever. But there were some cool shows there. So I saw this band Soundgarden. So you didn't have a beard. And it was here on bass, and then the drums was this guy with like a flock of seagulls haircut. Did he have that kind of haircut? He had some kind of new wave hair, right?
He kind of did, yeah.
And so I'm watching this band. It was Chris Cornell on drums, right? So I'm watching this band, and it was groovy. I'm like, yeah, this is cool. And then your guitar, you had this like chorus pedal on your guitar, and it was cranked to 11. It was like the wettest guitar, if you know what a chorus pedal sounds like, right? It was just like, wow, well, that's cool, and it worked. And I've seen many other Soundgarden shows after that, but that was my first show. So like, what do you remember? Do you remember that gig here's one more thing. You were pissed at the sound man.
Oh.
Like there was a bad gig.
I blamed him for the 11,
mix.
right?
There was a bad mix, and then you were like, flipping the sound man off, and I'm like, oh shit, do not piss off the sound man, because he's gonna give you a crappy mix out front. They have their power, their superpower. So what do you remember of that?
I don't know who we were opening for, and I'm sure we probably were opening for someone. Was that Melvin's and who's Skidoo?
Can you hear that? So talk
Can you
to
hear
my-
that, guys?
No, okay.
How about now?
He pissed,
All right.
he pissed the sound man off. You hear that?
I don't know. Was that Melvin's and Who's Skidoo? Louder?
No, it was on the small stage. And I'm like super loud now, knock. I'm distorted. This is grunge.
You got the wrong one.
This is
Hello?
grunge rock. We're doing grunge again.
Maybe that.
Trademark. Yeah, there you go. Well, why? Here, you
Wait a minute.
take this mic.
There you go. That sounds fine, right? All right. Maybe I'm just aiming wrong.
Here, take this one. Take this mic.
Hello? Want to pass it back and forth?
Yeah,
Like it's
a joint.
half, yeah, okay.
Or a beer.
This is a cool view. It's sunny and it's, verdant and it's still Capitol Hill. How'd that happen?
What was the show? Would you remember the show?
No, I was wondering if it was Who's Skidoo and the Melvins and us.
It was on the small stage.
Yeah, I don't know.
Okay. And so what's like one of the first shows that you remember?
David
remember
Bowie,
the 60s?
1979.
Well, here's what, if you can't remember the 60s, or if you can remember the 60s, you weren't there. Remember that cliche? That's for the baby boomers out there. Remember the baby, are there, I'm a Generation Xer.
Here, try that.
Hello. Keep going. So what was your first show that's the Soundgarden show you remember?
Well, our first show was, we were opening for a band from New York called Three Teens Kill Four. I think it's mentioned in there. I don't remember much about them. I remember, I don't know, I didn't really pay attention.
Hello. Hi.
I was kind of nervous about playing a show live, with this new band I was in. So yeah, that's a bit of a blur. I just remember my friends and my just kind of hanging out, waiting for everything to get done and make sure I don't fuck up. So that was the goal. It's like play songs, go hang with friends.
Did you ever play with Malfunction? They're in the book. Many times.
Totally. Totally. This is gonna suck this past this back and forth. But Malfunction, yeah, that was amazing. I actually knew about them before I ever played with them. I kind of was hanging out in Bainbridge Island. I had a scene. My partner then lived in Bainbridge. Ben Shepherd lived in Bainbridge, and I was good friends of his brother and his brothers and his sisters. So I was kind of hanging out there. These guys had talked about this band called Malfunction. There's like two bands there. Then the other one was called Skin Diver. They changed the name from Muff Diver. They were really into Van Halen. And then there's this,
they had a record.
Yeah.
They had a record that was
have it.
only one side was pressed and the other side was blank.
Yeah.
Skin Diver.
I have that.
I remember that.
I have that. Their guitars.
What the fuck is that? They didn't have enough songs for a whole record, so they just put one song on. Oh.
So everyone was
Skin Diver.
So they had a record, so they got all the talk and the hype, and then I saw this band play Malfunction. I said, yeah, Skin Diver's pretty cool, but this other band, these guys are writing their own songs and they're out of their mind. This is great. And eventually, you'd see the little flyers that they make all around Bainbridge, maybe at the ferry terminal or whatever. They're wearing makeup and they have really long hair, and
Because you write about it like when Andrew Wood died, right? That's in the book.
Yeah.
And that was like a big moment for Chris. And, they were going to be, that was part of the whole major label, when the major label started coming to Seattle and they signed Mother Love Bone.
mm-hmm.
And they were, and like Jane's Addiction was happening, Faith No More. So they were just set to be like a big, like Seattle rock band. And then Andy Wood got into heroin and he had an overdose and he died. I remember that year. Was that like 1988? Was that 89? 90? Was it 91? 90. Thanks for that correction. No, seriously, like,
We were on tour with, I believe, Chase Neverman at the time, so it probably would have been 90. And we got the news about Andy being in the hospital, and I think we might have been on the East Coast, New York. So we're just finishing up the tour, flew back, and I believe Chris went right to the airport to the hospital to see his good friend Andy. So that was kind of a big bag of shit. Terrible thing that happened.
yeah, it's terrible happened, yeah.
But it was yeah, they're the band most likely to, along. And it was kind of disappointing. We were friends of all those guys, and we knew how heartbreaking it was for them and how heartbreaking it was for everyone who's close to him. Plus, I wish you guys could have met him. Some of you probably have. He was a sweetheart, and he was one of a kind.
Like, I saw Malfunction play a few times, and there was like the Wood brothers, like Andy Wood, and then Brian Wood would just play shred solos during the whole song. Like, it was like he didn't even follow what the band was doing. He was just like shredding. Then they had a dog, and then the dog was like, a lot of dogs don't like drum sets. They're like really loud, and the dog would have no problem like being by a drum set. And so here's a story, one more story. So, and then Malfunction played in like Olympia, like whatever, some club there. And then Kurt Cobain went to the show, and then he was like, because he would work nights as a janitor, so he fell asleep. And not that he was bored, or anything, he was just tired because he was working. And then Andy Wood was like making fun of him for being asleep. That's some insight. Who's dancing around? He'd go, Olympia! He was Landrew. He was Landrew, the love god.
Landrew?
Yeah. Oh.
This is not working. Wait, is it?
It's your gig. You keep it.
All right, I got scared. Yeah, Landrew loved Master of Ceremonies, right? And he come from Olympus and spreading the gospel of 333. And these big, furry Smurf boots.
Yeah. So so like that was we were doing Sub Pop, and then you were like the Soundgarden was always the band that just like we really looked up to you. Like Soundgarden was just together, and then you made these powerful records. And I remember going and seeing Soundgarden in another show was at the Central Tavern, and then it was the song Beyond the Wheel, where Chris was, and he was doing that falsetto. It was total rock god. And then there was this thing that we would say about Soundgarden when Chris would take his shirt off, and that was called a full Cornell. And he was like full Cornell at that moment. And it was just like, whoa. Do you remember that show?
That was just about every show.
He had a nice physique. He had really good physique.
People in Seattle love swimming. Some can do it better than others. Yeah, ask me something else.
So you started a band, you and Hero and Chris started this band. It's in the book. It's in the book, and so you're jamming in this apartment, a house in the U District, in a basement, like your jam pad, you're making tape recordings. So at what point did Chris just bust out that falsetto, and you're like, wow, did you realize that?
No, I didn't. And I think when we were, I was a little bit oblivious to like a lot of, where I should have been impressed, I was just like, all right, that's cool, the song works. And as opposed to, that's amazing. I think, are you talking about, that song came about probably our third or fourth rehearsal space. So yeah, we probably were in the basement before that. And the reason why I bring that up is because we make a point to say that when we first rehearsed was in an attic where Hero's bedroom was, and it was very hot. Nobody in Seattle had air conditioning in those days, and you'd have to go to a bookstore to experience some. So the window would be open, and that's where we rehearse. So it made it very clear on a hot day that the neighbors are going to have to endure us. And here's a funny note. About a block down the street, a skin diver lived. And they had moved from Bainbridge over to Seattle, and they would have these Van Halen parties. The former muff diver. And so,
What does that mean? Oh, go ahead.
I,
What does muff diving mean?
you know,
You were in skin diver? Yeah. What did you pull? What did
Dave!
you play? Oh, okay.
That's right. Were you at that party? I think Chris and Hero and I we just went to the store to get some beer at QFC or Safeway. We're walking back, and I might have been you or Dave Hunt, and it's like, hey, we live nearby. We're having a party. The coolest thing.
Paddy wagon showed up?
I think everyone
Did
wanted.
somebody call the cops?
We kind of left, but we waited until we heard Panama, and then this is the coolest song in the world. Where did this come from? And then we went back to our place to rehearse. We had a limited time because we had to keep the window open in the summer, and
So you had an album with just one side press because you did so many cover songs, you couldn't have a whole record.
Press the other side.
Wow. But the machine, the stamper's going.
you ran out of song ideas.
Or it was tasteful. Like, no, we're going to just keep it
Should have
short.
thrown Malfunction on the flip side. So, yeah, and so that was the deal there. So I don't know. If Chris had you probably would have had the paddy wagon come by if we were doing Beyond the Wheel in the attic with the window open. In where was that neighborhood? Roosevelt, Finney? No, it was north of there. Anyways, so yeah, I think we try to keep things as loud as possible and as tame as possible to not have the thing have our rehearsals get shut down. And we did pretty good up until 10, then we had to stop. So it was fine. Then we go downstairs and listen to Killing Joke or Bauhaus or the Zeppelin record and drink that 12-pack that we went to go get when you hijacked us to your party.
So that's the connection, right?
To what?
Okay. So there's punk rock. Did you listen to Black Flag
Yeah.
and My War?
Yeah.
So that was like heavy, grungy music, but it was like punk rock vocals. And then you have Soundgarden, it's like heavy, grungy music, but then the vocals are rock. And that was like, wow. And it worked. Like, we weren't like, hey, this sounds really cool. And so that was like a synthesis between rock and punk rock there, just like old-fashioned rock. So if you know Black Flag, My War, that's the seminal record.
So I was DJing then at KCMU. So I had to review records and the ones that didn't make it into heavy rotation at the radio station came home with me. And I lived in the house.
You stole them.
Well, no, I returned.
Yeah.
I returned most of them to the station because
I don't believe you. No, sorry.
the ones I liked might have stayed in my collection. But '84, man, that's when our band formed. That's when Meat Puppets 2 came out. It's when Double Nickels on the Dime by the Minutemen came out. It's when Zen Arcade by Husker Du came out. When My War came out. And when the first St. Vitus album came out. So SST was just this insane label. And by the way, the big boys, Lullabies Help the Brain Grow came out then, and the Butthole Surfers. It was just the best year for indie punk and post-progressive, progressive post-hardcore. And we form, and this is my record collection, and it stays at Chris and Hero's house, and it comes back with ashes and beer stains, but I have a band that's fully informed with this cool stuff that's going on. And yeah, so at some point, Chris screamed really loud. We had to close the windows, and we moved on from there. I'm glad he took notes, because I forget.
Well, I got some notes. I try to be prepared. And so then, okay, so like the early days, and I remember like They were like joke bands. So you'd have a joke band like Mudhoney and Mark Arm. You hear me?
Yeah.
They had a joke band called
Grown Ups.
No, they had a joke band called Grown Ups, Limp Richards, and Beer Garden.
No,
So
they never did a beer garden.
They never did a beer.
They threatened
So
it.
they had a joke band. You have Limp Richards, the Grown Ups, and Beer Garden.
They didn't do beer garden.
They didn't do Beer Garden, but it was a joke band. Then we were going to start a major label. We were going to start a joke band called Major Label. Because of you guys.
So there's Grown Ups, Mr. Epic Calculations, which had Mark Arm playing guitar, and a guy named Smitty singing, and Darren, or then Talia, who ended up being Steel Pole Bathtub. And those guys were these crazy arty noise mongers. And the other bands were Limp Richards, had the coolest symbol that they would stencil like around the ferry terminal and just everywhere around the shows. So imagine the male, symbol, the arrow, and their arrow just kind of pointed down, curved. It was just cool, and it was bright orange. So it was the coolest thing. You'd see it all around Seattle, the Limp Richards. Anyways, Beer Garden was something I believe Mark threatened at a Vogue show. And he said, yeah, we're going to do and this is after Screaming Light came out. So it's like, we're going to create a band called Beer Garden, and our songs are going to be Nothing to Drink, and Beers to Forget, and Drink All on Down. And I thought, oh, that's cool. And I went and told Chris and Hero, and I thought about it for a second and came back to Mark and I go, well, we're going to start a band called Green Liver, and our songs are going to be called Drink On Down, and Nothing to Drink, and Dry as a Pint. So none of those happened. Well, I guess it kind of did happen in a way.
And so the joke band major label, and then you signed on the major label. I remember when that happened. That was a big deal. It's like, whoa, they're on A&M Records. And so tell us about like that. It's in the book too, like the transition. So all of a sudden you're like on the road
That is a bit of a blur because we were touring, we were recording, and we were talking to a number of different labels at the same time. First of all, it was Sub Pop, which was that was our first record, and we helped get those guys together by having Jonathan and Bruce speak to each other and collaborate on our project, which that in itself was difficult because I think each of the guys were pretty strong-willed and bright people that had their own ideas for their record label. And that was a big focus of ours until then the guys like the Screaming Trees, St. Vitus, Das Down, and start saying good stuff about us to SST. So Greg Ian and Chuck Dukowski, we get a call from those guys. It's like they wanted to have one of these new Seattle, one of these buzzed about Seattle bands on the label. And it was our favorite label because I named all the bands that came out of there earlier, from Black Flag, Meat Puppets, Minutemen, Who's Gonna, St. Vitus, Saccharine Trust. So that was a dream come true. It's like we're gonna be in this catalog of amazing records. It was a few years later, and things were kind of changing. Dinosaur Jr., Bad Brain, Sonic Youth. So that was a trippy focus. And we thought let's we'll go with our in-house booking agency, which was Global. That's what they were called. And they booked a tour in Europe and US. And then we started getting these calls from Epic and Slash and A&M, Capitol, Warner Brothers, because they heard a demo that went out. A woman by the name of Faith Henschel, who worked at the radio station with me, with Jonathan, with Bruce, and she sent out this demo that had a bunch of bands that I'm sure all you guys would be familiar with, including us, Room 9.
Were you wined and dined?
Eventually, I think so. I think we just kind of held them at bay. Susan Silver, our manager at the time, started receiving these phone calls. I was at work, and I worked in this photo processing lab, and I got a phone call, and the manager came and got me. He's like, hey, there's a phone call for you. I thought, oh no, what happened to my cat? So, and it was Susan. I thought, oh no, what happened to Chris? And it turns out that she's like, I'm sorry to interrupt you. I know you're at work, but we got this call, and Epic and A&M, and they're calling about this demo that Faith had sent out. It's like, oh, all right. We got this tour coming up, and we got this record we're gonna make. So I was nonplussed, because by that point, if a record was published on a major label, it seemed diminished in my eyes. I wasn't interested. It wasn't as attractive. So if it was on Touch and Go or SST or whatever, it seemed to have some merit. It was something I wanted to get into or collect. So by then, I didn't fully appreciate the enthusiasm that our managers and my bandmates were. The book is really a bunch of missteps on my part, not really seeing what's going on when I should be paying attention to it. So it's like, all right, great. So I went back to work, and that was it. And the conversations continued. Why aren't you excited about this? Well, I am kind of excited, but first things first. And the idea was, we're going to do this tour that SST's in-house booking agents booked. Let's commit to that. And the more we do on our own, the less these other guys can tell us what to do. We'll build our audience. We'll see the world. We'll promote our record. And then when these guys come here and tell us to be like, Warrant or whatever, then we'll say, aha, no, look at this. And so that's what we did. We collected a body of work from college papers and magazines and fanzines, and we got the records out there. We built the audience, and we're getting great reviews. So that at some point, when we eventually talked to these major labels, it became somewhat clear that they weren't going to establish, you interfere with the brand or what we had established. They kind of were inclined to leave us alone, although, I don't know, I don't think I would have looked very good in spandex or hairspray. But I mean, I'm sure these guys are thinking that. We get rid of the bearded dude, we get rid of that bass player, and keep the drummer, he's pretty damn good, and we'll get the guy who can play Van Halen riffs. I don't know. I'm sure those were cigar rooms conversations, but didn't happen, because that's just a little note to anyone out there who's got a band going. Just do it all yourself, and no one can screw with you or tell you what to do.
So here's an intersection with Susan Silver, and Kurt and I were interested in getting on a major label, and I spoke with Susan, and she goes, you guys should come down to Los Angeles. So we got in our van and we drove as far as we could. I think we made it as like some rest stop on I-5 between San Francisco and LA. It was just after like 12 hours of driving, we were exhausted. So we just slept there. Then we kept driving, we met Susan, and then she introduced us to all these folks, and it was pretty cool. Yeah.
Susan kind of ruled that way, and still does. She's been very supportive of all the bands out of the community,
Yeah.
young, successful, regardless. She's really, it's just like a, a super den mother, I guess, like, even the weird kid who doesn't want to go camping, it's like, come on, this would be great. She's very supportive and encouraging. And yeah, I think she did help you out.
Let me add something here. So we met the late, like Alice in Chains were on Sony, I think, and these different labels we met. So we had these meetings. We met an attorney, met some managers, and then we left. And we drove to San Francisco. We went to go see Buzz and Dale and the Melvins. You might know this story. And then it was in North Beach, maybe the Hungry Eye in San Francisco, and this band Scream was playing. And then the drummer was great. And we didn't have a drummer. Kurt and I, we didn't have a drummer. Like, God, he would be the best drummer for us. Like, this Dave Grohl. And so we were talking to him, and then we just left. We drove up 101 North to go home. And then we got a call a week later that Scream, the bass player, just quit. And he came, we invited him to come and jam, and the rest is history.
I actually not sure if I knew that story. I kind of feel like I may have heard that.
But if she never invited us down, if she never would have invited us down, it was just fate that
Oh,
they
yeah.
happened. It was just, wow, thanks, Susan. Yeah.
Thanks, Susan. Yeah, incredibly supportive of all the musicians here. I don't think I put this in the book either, but I was trying to sell the guys at A&M on you guys, on Nirvana. And you weren't signed yet. I wasn't sure if you were interested in being signed. And I remember telling the president of A&M and our A&R guys, like, this band from Seattle, they're amazing, they have these great songs, great singer, Nirvana. And I remember what our A&R guy said to us. He said, well, we don't know how you're gonna do. Why would we wanna get another one of you? We'll see what you do, and then we'll talk about it. And then, of course, you guys signed, and I think, and then that history. So then they come up to me, right, the same guys, A&R guys, and it's like, well, what else are you listening to after you? So I started kind of sell them on the Screaming Trees, and I describe them, and I play some Screaming Trees. This singer, Lanigan's amazing, and they just got, their perspective, their record collections are fantastic, and their heads are screwed on right. You just check this out. And no. And then they end up signing to some major label. Epic, okay, right. And then, so a year or two later, God, man, we were in a damn limousine in LA going to some event or function. And President of A&M, Al Cafaro, really sweet guy. He liked me and Chris. He liked talking to us. So he's like, well, what are you listening to, Kim? Oh, yeah, just a bunch of stuff. Is there anyone from Seattle that you really like? And there's a band that hasn't been signed called the Presidents of the United States. And I describe them, and I go, the guitarist Dave, they take half the strings off their instruments, and it's kind of like weird pop, country, rock, punk. There's this weird country thing in it, a little twang. And the president said, no, I've heard that. No. And I started going down all the country punk bands and new wave bands. I think of it. They're not like that. They're not like that. They're not like that. I can't describe it, but it's kind of minimal, but it's right to the point. You got to check it out. No. And they get signed to some other label, and multi-platinum, and then multi-platinum. So the end of this story is Soundgarden eventually breaks up. And the guy calls me up, Al, and says, hey, would you like to be an A&R guy for the label? And my answer was, don't they have to fly a lot, To turn up someplace for a weekend and drink beer with people you don't know?
You get a credit card to wine and dine?
I didn't know how to work a credit card then. All I knew is I didn't really want to have to fly somewhere and drink with people I didn't know and then do it again the next day. So the drinking part would have been okay, but it's just the travel.
Drinking, yeah. So this was like the dichotomy of like the late 80s and like 1990, like rock music. It was like Aerosmith did it really well in like the late 70s, right? And so then like you had these like rock bands and you had these men and they had really soft features and like makeup. They were very feminine. They had blow-dried hair and like scarves. But they were very macho. They had this swagger, right? And so then like grunge music or alternative music, whatever you want to call it, comes out and it's just the opposite of that. It's like these guys with facial hair and flannels, but we're all sensitive. It's like feminine sensitivity. So it was the total flip side of that. It's amazing how how things changed.
Actually, it's a good observation. I don't know if I had thought about that either, but there certainly was a different attitude socially and culturally, and one that was, I guess, informed by things other than Aquanet. And there was a literary component, to the sensitivities of many of the songwriters here in Seattle, and I think that's great. By the way you described, I just had this conversation like 2 days ago. The way you described all those bands from the 80s, and I liked a lot of the songs.
Yeah, they had good songs.
The culture wasn't particularly interesting to me, but there's some pretty cool songs. I was explaining to someone how this band that was kind of brother-sister band like the Stooges and the MC5 back in the early 70s called the New York Dolls had this massive impact on
Yeah.
popular culture and independent and underground culture that is not fully appreciated. I know that a lot of people in the multi-platinum metal 80s were referencing the New York Dolls. I think what was picked up through Hanoi Rocks, by the way, which was, they are a great band, Hanoi Rocks. But from the Dolls to Hanoi Rocks, you end up getting this kind of attitude, that kind of, sleazy hairspray, drugs kind of attitude.
There was there were like gender things going on, like gender roles, because they were like men. David Bowie like flirted with that.
Yeah,
The
glam and
New York
glam.
Dolls, glam. They had a very gender kind of.
Yeah. Well, I think, but
Gender fluid kind of thing.
but Bowie, I don't think,
But they were.
But they weren't macho like the-
They
like
weren't
the
macho.
80s.
Yeah, they weren't macho. Yeah.
So the thing is, they reference the New York Dolls, and it's like, just so you know, the correct reference to New York Dolls is Malcolm McLaren takes what they're doing, is managing them, and goes back to England, starts managing a band called the Sex Pistols. And if you listen to Steve Jones' guitar solos on Bullocks, it's totally Johnny Thunders. And it blows me away that this band could have such a profound influence on punk rock culture in one line, and then profound influence on 80s metal glam culture on the other hand. And so just go back home and listen to Nevermind the Bollocks, listen to those little two-string bends and triplets, and then go back and listen to Too Much Too Soon from the Dolls.
Tell us about lead guitar. You're a lead guitarist. Seriously, and punk rock didn't have a lot of punk didn't have a lead guitar, but you were a lead guitarist.
Well, I didn't use the term lead guitar until, just had more guitar in the band. And just distinguish at some point, it's like, oh, lead guitar, yes, in case people were confused. And I guess I didn't want to have to play solos because I didn't really like that kind of music at the time. Although there's some amazing solos on Meat Puppets too, and amazing solos in My War. I think the general, punk rock, Ramones, there's no guitar solos, right? And so I kind of did that in my late teens, my early 80s, and I liked playing because I'm kind of a spaz and nervous and just kind of constantly wheedling on the guitar, but I just didn't like listening to songs that had this break where some jerk starts wheedling on his guitar. It's like,
Did you ever listen to the Scorpions?
Yeah.
They had great guitar, that like Michael Schenker
Totally amazing.
or Uli Roth. Yeah, Uli Roth. Yeah. No, Michael Schenker was not in Scorpions. It was his brother was.
Here's the kind of guitar solo I love. It's when Lou Reed says, and then my mind split open, and then the guitar starts screaming. That's a cool guitar solo.
That's a cool guitar solo, right? Yeah. So.
So I don't know.
You guys know
I think in the early records, I was just billed as guitar, and that was perfectly fine with me. But Krist specifically would write a song and say, and here's where you play a guitar solo. Just play something. And, okay. So the commitment was there, and I think to me, a guitar solo, I guess, was just a pick scratch or feedback, and I started kind of thinking of things like Daniel Ash in Bauhaus. It's like, no, that's a great way to play. It's like he's punctuating the song without actually having to describe something overtly musical. He's doing something that's textual and dynamic. Okay, we'll do that for this whole part of the song. So I guess at some point I decided to call that lead, just so you wouldn't get confused by all the scratching and noises that were on some of the songs. And then I just gave up. I just what do I do here? Just filling up space.
It's great. You're a great guitar player. I've got
Thanks.
to play with you. It's really good. So it's in the book. You signed the deal. Then you do Ultra Mega. No, you do Bad Motor Finger.
Louder Love.
No. Well, Louder in Love was your first major, but your hit. I'm going to go for the hits, and so then all of a sudden, Super Unknown, and you're this giant band. So then you're famous, and then you kind of you talk about that like you didn't really change, but everybody else did.
I feel like we missed something there.
Did I get my chronology right? But it
I
doesn't
think
matter.
so, yeah.
Yeah, that was like the big record. But before, you had Bad Motor Finger. But go ahead. It's your catalog.
I don't know what the question is, though.
The question is like, did you get all of a sudden you're like a huge band and you're famous, and so then in your book, it's just like, well, I don't feel like I changed, but everybody else did, or most everybody else did, and like your dealing with your family, dealing with your friends, and your relationships, and how fame affected your relationships.
Yeah, I guess I was just trying to orient myself to being less anonymous, I suppose. I was still trying to, you're still young and you're still trying to figure out how you fit in with the world, and then all of a sudden the world starts telling you how you fit in, and they have their expectations. And it's like, well, wait a minute, slow down a bit here. I'm not really sure still of myself with my partners, with my band, with my friends, with my family. So at some point, you have to orient yourself and change. And the expectations did change from family and friends. I think they started seeing me differently, and they'd approach me differently. My family got bigger. I mean, cousins and uncles and aunts I hadn't seen in a while would turn up and ask me how much rent I was spending in this place in Wallingford. The answer was $350, and I split it with my girlfriend, so it was really a deal, and a nice view of Lake Washington and the cats.
What year was $350 rent in Wallingford?
1986 to 94. It was kind of cool. They didn't raise the rent. Wait, 88 to 94? They didn't raise the rent. It's kind of cool.
And so for inflation, that's like $1,000, $1,200.
I have no idea.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know either. Let's talk economics, right? Let's talk about inflation.
Well, let's start a war.
I had It's My War. That was a great Black Flag record. I would like that. I got famous, and how am I dealing with this? Like, oh my God, like people are recognizing me. Then I would have dreams that I'd be like completely naked in public. What it'd be like? I'd be in a place like this, like, what happened to my clothes? Like, what the fuck? And like, is people gonna notice that I'm like completely naked? And so, do your Freudian dream interpretation like? Right, that's open for interpretation, but there's some kind of anxiety there. Like, so dreams are the royal road to the subconscious, right? And so, I don't know if you that anxiety from that.
Well, that's around the time that I started recognizing you. It's like, that's the one who doesn't sing. He's the one who's the most active on stage, and I recognize him. The other guys, it's just a bit of a blur.
Oh, I remember, okay, Kurt and I went to see, well, we didn't go to the show, we didn't go in, or maybe we got in led at the end, they let us in at the end. It was Psychic TV at the show box.
Oh yeah, I was there.
And yeah, because we met you outside, and then like, I guess the stamp for the show, like on your wrist, was a 666, and then they stamped it on your forehead.
I asked him to.
So
I asked him
you have a
to.
photo of that? So he was walking out, like, so we're like, hey, dude, so what's with the devil? I mean, like,
Well, I requested that. We were walking in, and everyone is getting this 666 stamp, and I go, I think it was that show. No, it wasn't that show. It was Big Black at the show box. It was around that. It was that same series, and we were there. And I came from a dinner, and it was might have been family, friends or family. So I was wearing a jacket. It might have been girlfriend's parents. So I was wearing a jacket, and I went to go see Big Black. And this does relate to an earlier anecdote. It was at the end of the show. I was talking to the bass player. Not Steve. What was Dave? Dan? The guy was.
yeah, he was from Colombia. No.
Yeah, no, it wasn't Santiago Durán. It was so they had the drum machine, and then they had Steve and R.I.P. Steve Albini.
Yeah.
I think his name is Dave. Anyways, I'm talking to him, and he sees me standing there in a jacket, and particularly well-groomed, because I'm trying to impress my girlfriend's parents. He starts opening up my jacket and like looking and kind of like starts patting me. I'm wondering what he's doing, and he thinks that I'm an A&R person. And this is years before I get that offer. And I didn't understand why he was keeping me at a distance. I guess I looked like a Hollywood jerk.
And he was searching you?
Well, he's just kind of like, what's going on?
He's searching you. Like,
And he
what,
goes,
you have
"So who do you work for?"
knife, guns, what do you have?
That's it. Yeah, that's it. Yeah. So yeah, he thought I was going to solicit him, in some recording fashion, as opposed to, a big black fashion. They did the fireworks, which how did they get permitted to do that show? This is not in the book.
There were fireworks at a show?
Yeah, Albini would bring the firecrackers and.
Oh my God! Wow. Yeah, I
thought
remember
so,
that
yeah.
psychic TV show.
Yeah.
And they had televisions like stacked. They had this audiovisual thing, and I might have had a beer or two too many, and I yelled,
I could be conflating
Max
shows.
Headroom. Remember Max Headroom? It was like Max Headroom. It looked like that. It was insane. So, okay, what's my next question here? I think I'm running out of questions. How are we doing on time here? Are we just getting started? You think so? Well, thank you. That's kind of you. So, wow. And then how about the? I took notes. Here, you keep talking.
Chris took notes.
I think I got all my notes. I talked about,
Well,
there's some heavy things in the book, right? And
I think it'd be a distinct change in tone.
you don't want to talk about the heavy stuff. Yeah, there's life change. There's like life changes. I wrote a note here. Just it kind of goes back to Andy Wood and like Will Shatter, the bass player, Flipper. He died, and they died from heroin overdose. And like I've never seen heroin. You know that? I've never seen it. I've seen people on it.
That is a point I make in the book a number of times, is that none of these bands had a drug culture, and the scene didn't have a drug culture. There were individuals that had their own sense of self and their own sense of adventure. I've had to explain this many times to journalists, interviewers, and I made sure it was present in the book. And I talked with you guys, after we lose Andy, and then lose Kurt. I explained that the band didn't have a drug culture. I was close friends with all these other guys, and they themselves were just as impacted and distraught, and in no way were they somehow reinforcing this kind of this risk. As I would tell people, you drive as fast as you want to, you climb a mountain if you want to climb it, and people make choices to make themselves feel good and to enjoy their lives, and a lot of the choices we make are risky, and that's part of being alive. And the impact of this constantly had me engaging with my family and friends and record labels and tours and say, hey, this isn't us. This isn't even them. This is just a strange aberration with individuals that are living their own lives. And that was so difficult for people to understand. And so I'd meet adults, because I barely consider myself one now. And then I certainly did. And I'd have to kind of, they would look at me kind of odd or with suspicion, or here's this guy with hair too long and doesn't look like he combs it, and a beard, and he plays in one of these Seattle bands. And it became very conspicuous after losing Andy and Kurt. And I think the belief was that Seattle was somehow embracing of and reinforcing the decisions.
There was a joke T-shirt. I guess you're gonna laugh, or I'm like this. He's the straight man, and I'm the comic. That's like the dynamic up here. But I came to Seattle to get a record deal, and all I got was this lousy heroin habit. You know, it's just like, wow. Yeah, so dealing, and then you talk, there's things in the book about just like communication issues in the band, like, and we did that. We had those problems too, just couldn't, there was that Metallica documentary where they hired a like therapist to like work through their issues. Maybe we could have done that, but I remember seeing what you know, like the best times we ever had and what kept us together was the music. And we just loved to play music, and we really played well together, and it clicked, and we could just jam, and we could put the songs together, and it all came together pretty fast. Is that like in like Soundgarden, the songs just kind of, you got a groove, and the song would come together pretty fast?
Yeah, I think at that point, individually, there was this, we each had, you know, these banks of ideas that we were storing up and sharing with everyone, and you know, periodically remind everybody, it's like, hey, remember this thing I showed you last year or a few months ago? And we just explore it, and if it clicked with it, initially when it clicked with Krist and Hero, then we knew we were onto something. So we're all enjoying this, we all find our role in the song and with the band, and it's rewarding for each of us. And then we knew that, well, we're doing something right. We're not compelling anybody to be anything other than who they are and who we are collectively. And that can be, you know, difficult as the band becomes more successful if that communication kind of goes away, as it does in just about all of our relationships. You know, whether it's with our parents or kids or partners or our boss. I mean, God, I don't think communicate
And then
well with anything else.
and then that was like down on the upside. Like then you had like issues with, because it was more like demos were brought in, and there wasn't more like, it was like less fluid.
It kind of, I mean,
It's in the book.
It is in the book, but it's one of many dynamics that are certainly present. I think the frustrating one was that lack of communication, and having sort of, the band kind of became a sort of like a way to warehouse individual ideas. So as opposed to us being a collective and behaving in a way that was shared creatively, it became, you know, a place for individuals to kind of bring their ideas in and then expect the other three guys to address, you know, well, not necessarily address it, just embrace it as is. So, and I'm sure that's not an unusual thing either. Just we had 4 songwriters, and it became a band that was had 4 individuals presenting their solo ideas. I think that's how I present that in the book.
Yeah, you
but
do.
there's a lot of other factors going on in that record. Most of it is positive. It's a great record. They're fantastic songs on it, and I enjoy the songs that we played on. I think specifically, it's always like, why did the band break up after that? It's like, well, there are a number of frustrations. You know, there are things going on live, there are things going on at home, there are things going on in the studio, and
On tour.
on tour, yeah. So it's, you know, it just happens. You know, it's like, you know, relationships are always difficult.
Like a band's a family.
It is a family.
Yeah.
It is,
Yeah, you're a family. Yeah, then you lose somebody, and you know, you lose like a family member, and it's so shocking. So like, you know, you deal with that stuff. And I know Soundgarden and Nirvana, we shared this, just a work ethic too. It's just like, hey, like rehearsals were serious. Like we were there to make music. Like there was no scene or people hanging out, and we were really sober. Like we would do, sometimes we'd mess up and drink and have a shambles of it. But it's usually like there's concentrations. And I got to play with you and Matt with Third Secret. We made 2 records. And that was, well, thank you. And it's mentioned in the book, and there was just, again, that work ethic. We would just work. So then we're getting motion now to that we should transition to the Q&A portion of the program. Thanks, Mark. Okay.
Oh, cool.
all right, I'm done.
Kim,
Oh, I guess not.
here's a question. What story didn't make it in the book?
So many. There's
Just so many stories that didn't make it in the book, and I don't know. You pull punches, you decide what is shareable, what you would disclose and what you wouldn't disclose. I mean, I want people to understand the dynamic of a group of individuals, specifically the personalities in this band, which are just amazing. I love every one of them and still do. The dynamic, what they brought to each of us, what I learned from Chris and Ben and Matt and Hero, what I hope they learned from me. At some point we were successful at listening and learning from each other. And that's one of the things I want to describe about that dynamic and what we created together, the positive aspect of it. There are drawbacks, and part of that is like Chris says, you're in a family, so there's going to be conflict in your expectations, in how a relationship is attended to or maintained. But I think ultimately, the takeaway is just so, for me, it's just so pleasant. It's so amazing what we did together and the way we did it with mutual respect and support and encouragement. I can't think of anybody who was more encouraging during this whole period than Chris was. He was so supportive of everybody else. He knew that what was good about any of the individual's insights creatively would be beneficial for the band and beneficial for him because he's learning as well. And I think, especially after we lost Andy, it was important to Chris to nurture that uniqueness in each of us, and he did so. And he became less fearful about appraisals and judgment of one's creation. And he just started doing it, became really prolific. And that's post Loud and Love, after Hero leaves and we lose Andy and stuff. And then Chris just jumped. He just became, he just got this different insight into himself and creativity and the uniqueness of the people he knew. And he encouraged us he tried to bring that out of all of us, and he to various degrees of success, but he certainly took that, for himself and became just prolific as hell and just generating fantastic material. At times it's hard to keep up with it. You get four people and you're making one album every 2 or 3 years, and you just got so many songs coming out. But that is for me, that's one of the brilliant takeaways of just working with Chris and Ben and Matt and Hero and Scott and Jason. All these guys are just one of a kind, and what they brought to each of us and what we learned was definitely special. You mentioned earlier about the work ethic. In many ways, it's an incredible work ethic because there's a lot of demand upon you. And I think at some point where, when things are not quite working right, there's also a disparity in how individuals feel they're contributing to the collective benefit. And some people might feel they're contributing more than the others are, or you might feel that others should pick up their slack. And I definitely remember being in the studio and thinking, I don't want to do that right now. So I think there's definitely a component of that work ethic that I know personally was lacking for myself in situations where I could have benefited from being more productive or receptive to whatever dynamic process is going on in that studio. But ultimately, the document's there, and I get to reflect on it all the time and say, wow, that was great, or that turned out fantastic. So the work ethic thing is definitely needed for success, and I think all the bands in this scene really, work their asses off, touring, promoting, doing interviews, and rehearsing. But it is one of those individual things where your sibling thinks that mom's giving you all the credit and you're not pulling your weight, and that stuff happens. And people appraise themselves, they look at themselves, and they pat themselves on the back for their successes, and they point at someone else for their failures. But you actually, or you can be like Michael Jordan, pat yourself on the back for your failures and pick it up and do better. That was, I just referenced him because Chicago, and that was a message that he tried to impart to his team, is that you learn more from failing than you do from succeeding. So you have to attribute, you know, your screw-ups and own them, and not just pat yourself on the back for your successes.
Okay, next question. It's for you and me. So, did you have any quote unquote kickback from your parents choosing this career? I love you, Madison Dawell. Well, my parents were cool. They were always cool. Like as a wee lad, I learned accordion, and I was playing accordion today, so they paid for my accordion lessons. And we had a band later when accordion was uncool. And so we had like a rock band in the garage, and we made a lot of noise. And then it was just I've read like literature from like developmental studies of human development. And like, so if you have any small children, like it's really good for development to learn an instrument. It teaches delayed gratification, concentration. So that's my message to the parents out there.
All the musician kids I knew growing up in school, they were all the smart kids. They weren't just playing an instrument. There was something about the way they learned it, their relationship with the instrument. And these guys end up doing great at math and great at literature and science. And you start seeing that. It's like, oh, that guy became a doctor. Remember when they were playing that clarinet? So yeah, definitely. That's I think. And this is not to disregard any other pursuit as a kid, but man, I don't even know why I'm saying this, but music, not just books, but music certainly, but also sports. I mean, you do learn things like citizenship and teamwork and working for a collective goal. I mean, all these things build character. All these things, everything they're offering, these things are beneficial. You learn from other people. You become socialized in a way that you understand your value with others, and you understand and appreciate other people's value, and you can have respect for them and the variance that they might have socially or culturally or politically. And I think these are some of the things that are offered by learning these things. And there was something I was going to talk about before you mentioned the music education thing, and I can't quite recall it, but I'm sure we'll come back again. What was the question?
Oh, like did you get any kickback, like from your pushback, I guess?
From my
that's what it
parents?
is. Yeah, like any kind of pushback or discouragement. It sounds, that's how I read it. Like were your parents like discouraging or?
I think my mom studied piano as a kid, and she went through this program in India that was part of this British Royal Academy thing. And I think when she was 18, she had a choice to either go into performance or teaching, and she chose teaching, and she got married, had a kid, and it probably spoiled some of her dreams or aspirations. I think she would have liked to have continued pursuing that. So I think she was, proud and happy of my success in music. She was never annoyed by my obsessive, focus on it, just sitting in my bedroom all day playing guitar and listening to stupid transistor radio, and she never criticized that. My dad, on the other hand, did. He's like, when are you going to stop this rock and roll thing?
That's in the book.
And grow up, yeah.
That's in the book.
It's like, what are you going to? I don't know what I want to be when I grow up, And I still don't. It just happened. All of a sudden, there I am. But my dad would kind of treat it that way. And he wasn't. When I look back on it, he wasn't really a jerk about it, but he would always say, you need to have a plan A. This seems like a distraction, but what are you going to do? Are you going to go to law school or something? Are you going to study something other than philosophy, something that will give you a
Remember
job?
in Austin Powers, Dr. Evil? Like Dr. Evil asked his son, like, well, what do you want to be when you grow up? He said, I want to be a veterinarian. Will you be an evil veterinarian?
I was an evil veterinarian.
Years of the Evil Veterinarian. Oh, that's a great album cover, or album name. Evil Veterinarian, or band name.
That's the next band.
That's the next band, Evil Veterinarian.
There you go.
Yeah. You can't steal that name. That's our name.
You can
Evil
use Elvis veterinarian, but not evil veterinarian.
Elvis Veterinarian. Let's do, okay, so the next question.
No, wait.
Oh, okay. There's a
Alright.
lot of questions here, but.
My dad saw me on TV and decided that, that's okay, what he's doing, I guess. I think, I don't know if it was MTV or we played some Saturday Night Live, that's what it was. And then my dad stopped bugging me about that. All of a sudden he had this context and perspective of what I was doing. It's like, oh, I guess that's what he's gonna be when he grows up.
How did it feel playing live again after being apart since 1997?
Wow.
That's in the book.
Well, it was
Read the book
amazing.
and find out.
You're not gonna learn
The
anything.
good book. Here's the good book. The good book, brothers and sisters.
It was amazing because we played Lollapalooza in Chicago, which is where I was born here, but I was ruined there in Chicago. So you went back there, saw family, friends, and then stood on stage and saw the skyline. There's a photo of it in the book, and looked at the skyline. It was blustery. It was typical summer in Chicago. It was so humid and hot, and it was just uncomfortable, and I felt at home. It's very strange. And so, yeah, after 12 years, it's like, we're doing this again. And then I kind of look around, and there's Matt over on the other side of the stage left, there's Ben, and there's the back of Chris's head. And I'm like, wow, this is, at some point it hit me that I'm here. I love these guys, and it felt so natural. I didn't have to struggle at it at all. It felt like that up until that moment. It's like, oh yeah, I do this, and I do this with them.
And the winner is, did you gain any inspiration from local bands as you were coming up?
Yes. We mentioned
Oh, the band, yes? They were local.
They were not local. Dave, you knew some cool bands over there in Bay Ridge. Yes, definitely.
This is from Lauren. What would you hope the current generation would take away from the book if they don't know anything about Soundgarden?
That I suppose the love we have for each other is probably one. And I think that collective pursuits are a noble way to understand yourself and to engage yourself. The shared project and vision, it's difficult. It can be difficult, but it's so rewarding and so fun, and everyone benefits. I learned so much from the people I play music with, but also the friends I had, over my life. And I'd like to think that they learned something too, or I don't know, it's all a blur when I'm hungover. Did they impart anything for me? Why are my shoes untied?
You mentioned that songs were difficult during the studio recording process. Were there any songs that came easy for you, Soundgarden?
Songs were difficult in the recording process?
Yeah, that's the question. You mentioned that, what's that?
Oh, Black Hole Sun.
That's your question? Ask the question.
I saw something on Instagram the other day where it said that it was really difficult sometimes recording.
Oh, working with the producer?
Yeah, were there any tracks that came out easy?
Your Phil?
Lots of them came out easy.
Okay.
Yeah, plenty of tracks came out easy. The difficulty was, trying to, that was our 5th record, right? So we have a producer who wants to do something a certain way, and I have a different understanding of how to do that. And I'm much more familiar with my level of comfort. So that's the difficulty. not necessarily the song. I may have made a comment about the fact that we'd often learn songs, in the rehearsal studio, and then they get performed live. And when they're performed live, that's where they take on that life and their identity. You become familiar with it each time you're performing and playing it. In this case, it was kind of working the other direction. The song exists as this studio demo composition, and now we're going to learn it and record it. So its first life is going to be in a record rack, a tower, and it's not going to be on stage. So that was a different perspective, a different way to understand that creative process. You're not getting the immediate feedback from friends and family, your peers, your colleagues. You're kind of just trusting the judgment of the band and the producer, and knowing full well that that song's going to change and it's going to evolve, because you're going to play it live and you're going to decide, I don't want to do it that way, let's try this or let's try that. And that's just what's going to happen. You're going to find where you fit with the song and the material, and you explore those parameters with your band members.
One more question. One more.
Okay. Which is a good one? Okay. In the beginning, what was the farthest you thought you would make it? What were your goals in the 1980s?
Well, when I was like 10, I thought I was destined for something great. When I was 11, I thought, I'm going to really be great. When I'm 12, I thought, if I want to, I'll be a really famous rock star or a scientist or a baseball player. When I was 13 or 14, the failures started rolling in. You start realizing, like, oh yeah, I don't think I'm ever gonna be able to dunk a basketball. I can still learn how to play guitar, but you still have that belief because you're young and naive. It's a fantasy, it's a daydream. So you imagine something, you think, yeah, I can do that. But reality sets in, and you realize that there's work you have to put into it, and all the things you learn about sharing the vision. And then you give up on that fantasy or the dream, which I describe that in the book. It's like, well, I moved on to other things, more practical things. I'm in school, I'm a student. You have your friends, these relationships that you attend to, you have your job. You have a duty and responsibility for the people you love and for your pets, cats, dogs, dragons. I had those kind of responsibilities. And that becomes who you are. And then meanwhile, these skills you develop with other people, partners and friends, start manifesting themselves with these little created nuggets that everyone likes. And just little by little. I wouldn't say I was a passenger in my own life. I'd like to think I was driving, but I don't think there was any particular direction or wish list of where we wanted to be, other than let's learn this song, and then let's see what our friends think of it when we play it for them. So we weren't thinking that far ahead, and I don't think we ever did. Had we been thinking like you do when you're 10 or 11 or 12, all you would have experienced is disappointment, because it takes time, it takes work, and you would end up being very disappointed in not being able to achieve whatever it was, a Norma Dome cover of, Time magazine or something. Those things aren't going to happen. I think we realistically understood that and never set those goals. And you can still be ambitious within that. You can still be driven to be the best at what you do. I think for me, I was motivated by making sure that Chris and Hero and Matt and Ben loved what I was doing. It's like, wow, cool, they're smiling, they dig this. And that's the motivation. But then you play for your friends and they feel the same way. It's like, I like your new song, or I like the way you're playing. All these things are the success, and I think we were successful right at the beginning, in 1984. And we were continually successful, and that audiences grows. And as you build the audience, and you're still seeing right in front of you, then you're always successful. And I don't think that would have happened if I maintained that objective that I had at age 10 or 11, which I was sure was going to happen anyways.
Thanks, Kim. Do you have an announcement? Thanks, everybody. Thanks for listening.
Thank you all so much. One round of applause. Thank you, Tim. Thank you, Krist. Please make sure you grab your book on the way out. So all the signed copies of The Screaming Life are at the front counter for you. Please turn in your little slip and you'll get your book. Thank you all.
Thanks, man.